What's the challenge with some of those approaches that are there? For example, one meal a day. They got
Yeah.
very popular. That's out there specifically for women. And obviously there's these different stages that women are at depending on what age they are and whether they're menopausal or whether they're in their prime fertility years. So what's the challenge with an approach like that as one fasting tool that people are using?
Yeah, a lot of people are doing one meal a day. It's like once you find that groove, you're like, oh, this is so easy and convenient. And then you just want to keep doing it over and over again. So let me kind of back up for a moment and sort of give the big picture of why fasting works. Is what we're doing is we're mimicking what we did primally back in the cave days. And so back in those days, we would walk out of the cave and there wouldn't be men and women would walk out and there wouldn't be any food. So we would have to go hunt for food. And in that ability of the human body to go hunt for food, we switched over into another fuel source, which is called the fat burner system or the ketogenic energy system. And we used ketones to go find food. And then when they hunted for food, they brought it back and then they feasted for days. So the human body in general, both men and women, are meant to have feast-famine cycling. We need to go into periods of less food, and then you can go into periods where you're feasting, what I say, on the right foods. That is how our metabolism really shines best. Now, the challenge, so if you do one meal a day over and over again, you're not in accordance with that feast-famine cycling. You were not meant to eat all day. You were not meant to fast all day. You were meant to dip in and out of different styles of eating and different styles of fasting. Now, for women, this is even more important because when you look at, let's just say that, let's pull on the thread of estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen and progesterone are two of the major sex hormones that drive women, and they need vastly different approaches. So estrogen does amazing with fasting. Progesterone, you will completely tank your progesterone with fasting. So if a woman is doing one meal a day over and over and over again, eventually she's going to lose progesterone. And if you lose progesterone, you're going to be more anxious. You're going to have trouble sleeping. Your hair's going to fall out. You're going to have trouble calming your body and your mind. And this is literally what we saw on my YouTube channel, is that everybody started doing, after the obesity code came out, everybody started doing one meal a day. They got so excited about the weight loss benefits of fasting. They started doing one meal a day. And then they all came to my YouTube channel where I was teaching variation. And I started seeing that the women had very consistently similar results and problems. And it was exactly what I just said. Hair falling out. Some of them were gaining weight back, trouble sleeping, highly anxious. And it was all the women because progesterone cannot handle one meal a day.
It also seems that if somebody's continuously doing one meal a day, especially as they enter into their later years, it might be more difficult for them to get the appropriate amount of protein they need in their body to maintain muscle mass and avoid things like sarcopenia. Is that also a challenge that's there too?
It's a huge challenge. And then let's put it in the context of women. So we have to remember that protein is the most important macronutrient. You know, in the whole low carb movement, we got excited about and villainized carbs, although I believe nature's carbs are healing. I don't think we need to totally put the enemy badge on carbs. But with protein, we are not eating enough protein as humans, but as women, we need more protein than ever. And especially after 40, when we start to go through those menopausal years, we need protein. So if we're doing one meal a day, you need at least 30 grams of protein per meal to trigger amino acid receptor sites in your muscles, to grow your muscles stronger. But on a daily basis, I really do believe 1 gram of protein for 1 pound of body weight you want to be is a good measurement. But how are you going to accomplish that with one meal a day?
There was a popular book on the topic of one meal a day that was written by James Cameron's wife. And I think, they're very vocal about their advocacy is really from a place of they truly believe that plant-based is the best for the world.
Yep.
And they are also seeing that one meal a day. I went to a talk of hers in Santa Monica, just as like a supportive thing, just seeing what's out there in the world and always being open-minded. And it also seemed that the idea of preaching one meal a day was another way to get people to cut down specifically maybe animal protein.
Yeah.
That was being, that it was kind of the vehicle to kind of get people to that place.
Yeah.
And just was interesting. I just was, paying attention to that.
Yeah.
Obviously, people can eat whatever they want to eat
Yep.
or not eat whatever they want to eat.
Amen.
But let's zoom out of one meal a day.
Yeah.
And let's go back to the idea of fasting. So you said something that a few other women, you guys are in a small but powerful minority. And I'm proud to say that my podcast has been one of those that was early on really giving voice to a lot of the great women in this space. But the idea that women cannot fast like men.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
And why do certain things work for men that may not necessarily work for women?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And I think what all of us are trying to do is bring to light the conversation in the health world that men, when you look at your hormones, you work off of a 24-hour system. You get testosterone every 15, 20 minutes. You're getting a pulse of testosterone. It'll come back in another 20 minutes. And testosterone is pretty much the primary hormone that drives you. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not affected. Estrogen is still a part of something you need to keep in the mix and make sure you're not doing endocrine disruptors and all of that. But you really have one hormone that is going to convert into other hormones and is driving you. Women, we have 3 hormones. We have estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. You have it coming in a 24-hour period. We have these 3 hormones coming in a 30-day, 28, 30-day period. So when we look at the characteristics of these hormones, testosterone for both men and women does amazing with fasting. Now, we don't have a ton of studies for women on fasting and testosterone. I wish we did. We have on men, we see 24-hour fast, you can upregulate testosterone. Men do so well with fasting because it has such an energizing experience to testosterone, and you can really upregulate testosterone. But women, we only get testosterone during ovulation. We don't get testosterone much the rest of our cycle. We get estrogen in the front half, and then we get progesterone primarily in the back half. And progesterone and estrogen have to be treated differently. So estrogen is very forgiving. You can do a lot of cardio, you can do long fasts, you can do low carb, like anything that's going to bring glucose down, bring insulin down, estrogen's going to shine. If you have PCOS, this is one thing I write about in the book, you're really going to benefit from doing longer fasts, going into those low carb moments. It's going to help you balance out estrogen and testosterone. But in the back half of our cycle, when we get progesterone's completely the opposite. So what happens with progesterone is if cortisol goes high, progesterone gets shy. Like she's out. Like you want to run a marathon, it's day 21 of your cycle. It's not the best time to do it because as cortisol is up, you're going to see progesterone go low. So any stressor like a fast is a stressor, exercise can be a stressor, is going to raise cortisol, and now progesterone goes away. Second thing on why women need to fast differently is that we actually are more insulin resistant the week before our periods. And that's to progesterone's advantage. Progesterone needs glucose to be higher. So I can't tell you how many women that I've put CGMs on, continuous glucose monitors, and just by teaching them how to fast like a girl, we still are seeing that glucose is going up the week before her period because that's what progesterone needs. Okay, I got to interrupt this video because I have a free guide for you so you can master fasting. It's called A Beginner's Guide to a Fasting Lifestyle. And all you've got to do is click here and you can jump right in.
And to take a quick little pause, I mean, we've done so many episodes on this topic, but you never know who's listening.
Okay.
Just give us the quick breakdown on insulin resistant versus insulin sensitive. It's something that kind of confuses a lot of people, but it's always nice to get a rehash from someone.
Okay, so insulin resistance means that your cells cannot use insulin to your advantage. So insulin is the hormone that will actually push glucose into our cells so they can be used. So if you're insulin resistant, that can't happen. And then what the body does is it has to store glucose and insulin somewhere else. So it stores it in fat. then it stores it in the liver, then it'll store it in your eyes, it'll store it in all the places that the mitochondria are hanging out. It'll just pack all that glucose, store it in your brain. So that's insulin resistance. Insulin sensitive means that when insulin shows up, you can actually use insulin to your advantage and push glucose into the cells so the mitochondria can use it for energy.
Yeah. And people often think of it as being something that only individuals that are overweight or obese are dealing with. But there's plenty of people that are in that skinny fat category. You know, I come from an Indian and South Asian background. A huge percentage of that population, men and women, now that we're sort of in North America and Europe and eating the sort of standard diets that are there, a huge percentage of those people, even if their BMI doesn't put them in a category of being overweight or obese, they still have insulin resistance, and it's a major driver of a lot of things that they're suffering with.
Yeah, it's such a good point, because when the pandemic hit, there was a lot of talk about metabolic syndrome being the core of a poor immune system. And then when metabolic syndrome became a very popular topic during that time, there was a study that came out, I'm pretty sure you've heard of it, that only 12% of Americans are metabolically fit. So then the question became, well, what does metabolic fitness mean? And it's everything from your blood pressure to your cholesterol, to your fasting glucose, to your circumference of your waist, to your liver enzymes. Like, there's a variety of things that need to be in balance without medication for you to be metabolically fit. And it's really, the fact is, we've got everybody's walking around insulin resistant, but if you are just judging insulin resistance off of weight, you're missing the whole discussion.
So connecting this back to the topic that started it, you were saying that women in their fertility years, right, in their prime fertility years, a week before their period, are naturally more have challenges with sort of processing and using insulin. Right? They're more insulin resistant in that period of time.
Yeah.
And so what kind of impact does that have when it comes to how they're thinking about navigating the different stages of their cycle, specifically like that week before their period?
Yeah. Well, this is the reason I laugh, is because ask any woman, what does she want to do the week before her period? She wants to sit on the couch with a box of pizza and a tub of ice cream, do nothing, and eat carbs. And usually there's some chocolate involved in that, like craving chocolate, which is interesting too, because if you look at what we naturally are inclined to do, which is slow down, eat more carbs, and crave things like chocolate, well, let's look at what the demands of progesterone are. Progesterone needs you to raise glucose, so that's why you crave carbs. And you need magnesium to make progesterone, which is a large part of why a lot of women crave chocolate. And you can't have cortisol high. So what progesterone does is try to get you to slow down and have less energy so that you can actually be in a place where you have all the right mixture of cortisol, insulin, glucose, everything's got its flow so that progesterone can make her appearance. And yet we villainize that. We push through that last week. We haven't been taught what the importance of that last week of our cycle is, but yet there are very clear demands that progesterone has. And I believe this is a large reason why we have such a hormonal mess for women, is because we haven't been taught when we can lean into more of the challenging health habits and when to actually pause.
So that would be, for example, a time where we want to maybe ease up for women, not we, but for women that have their period and their cycle and everything, they might want to be easing up on things that be positive stressors at other times during their cycle, but now it might be too much on the body.
That's right. That's right. And this is a big part of my message, and what I put in the book is we're brilliantly designed. Like, how many times have we, complained about the fact, I don't feel like doing anything. I just want to eat carbs. I don't feel like going out. I don't feel like working out. And it's like we haven't been taught the design of our bodies. What ends up happening is we've just been bitching and moaning about PMS. But progesterone's been there the whole time saying, hey, here's the environment I need you to live in. And so this is part of what I'm trying to break free for women is if you don't feel like working out and it's day 21 of your cycle, there's a reason for that. If you're craving more carbs, how about you go instead of to the box of pizza and we start to bring in some sweet potatoes and look at nature's carbs. So we've got to first help women identify that's normal. And then we start to change the conversation of how do you make it healthy for progesterone.
Okay, where are my gals that are struggling with hormonal imbalance? Bloated, feeling like you're not making progress with weight loss? You need to add these foods in so that you can support better hormonal health. There is a lifestyle that estrogen wants you to live, and there's a lifestyle that progesterone wants you to live.